Hello and welcome back to LTC Heroes Live by Experience Care. Today I'm excited because I've been in Nebraska all day long and I was told that Glenn is a great character to have on the show. Glenn Van Ekeren, the president at Vetter Health Services. Glenn, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be with you.
So I was going to try to surprise you by letting you know that I've looked up all the books on Amazon and all the good reviews. But Jaylene already said, look them up. So you know that I'm prepared for that. Normally I talk about long-term care first, but I want to know how you got into writing books about gratitude and happiness.
Well, I'll tell you, it started several years ago when I began doing some professional speaking. And one of the things I noticed is that people enjoyed stories and quotes instead of just flat verbiage, right? And so I began researching and putting together my own selection of stories. Ended up writing, this is, you got to remember, this is 40 years ago, wrote it all out by hand on a yellow pad and then typed it all up.
Some people don't even know what a yellow pad is.
I know, that's true. That's a good point. A legal pad. Ended up sending the manuscript to 50 publishers. I got 49 no's, which I learned, what failure is all about. And then I got a call one day from Prentice Hall, and the long story short is they wanted to publish a book. They called it the Speaker Source Book. Then I did another one, and then it just kind of rolled from there, and have just thoroughly enjoyed the expression of my heart on paper. So.
They made a smart decision because I can see that you have really, really good reviews. I want to have a follow-up question before we get into long-term care because I follow my curiosity. Which book was the hardest for you to write?
Oh, wow. That is an extremely good question. I think the hardest one is one I wrote recently called Little Leadership Lessons, ... from an Old Guy. And there are now 3 volumes, but the first one was definitely the most difficult because it was written over several years and then trying to decide what are the 50 most important lessons I would love to share with people. And after publishing that one, decided to do another and another. We have a 4th one ready. I'm just not sure I want to do the same kind of book again, but that one was difficult because I wanted to make sure that the leadership philosophy that I believe so deeply in was effectively communicated through the little leadership lessons.
What does your kind of creative writing process look like today? Do you jot down notes and then eventually pass it over to a computer? Are you a morning person? You put up an alarm at 5 till 6, you make yourself write?
I never know when it's coming. A lot of times it's while I'm driving. Other times it's just...
That's really hard to write.
It is. Well, actually, this should not be published, but I wrote a lot of books when I was traveling just by writing without looking. Yeah, I didn't get many words on a page, but it did a lot of writing that way. But no, I do not have just a systematic way of writing. What I have in my computer right now, I have a file called Writing in Progress. And there must be 100 to 150 files in there. And those are just thoughts I have and things that I want to write about. Some are near completion and some not so much. So they either go into one of 2 things. I do a blog that's entitled I've Been Thinking, and that comes out once a month. And then I also, the middle of the month, do a little thing called Little Leadership Lessons, ... from an Old Guy. And that's what I think about most of the time. What can go in a blog and what kind of leadership lessons would I like to share?
Well, that's kind of works as a transition into long-term care because I like to figure out what people's hobbies are. This morning I interviewed Phil Fobb, and he likes to race cars.
Yes.
And so I asked him, what has he learned? How has racing race cars helped him be a better leader in long-term care? So I'm going to ask you, how has been a prominent writer with many books helped you in long-term care?
Yeah. I think what it's done more than anything is forced me to think creatively. Never to settle for things the way they are, but to continue to look at ways that it can be improved and to challenge other people's thinking. So if I can't write something that challenges somebody to think about anything differently than they had thought before, then it's probably not worth writing. So the writing process has been really good for me. The other thing it has done is it's forced me to formulate my thoughts about those things that I believe so deeply in. So leadership, for instance, I will admit I'm opinionated about leaders and who we should be and how we should create culture. And so it's fun for me to be able to put that into words and then share with other people.
I want to ask you, what's the worst advice that you hear about leadership?
Wow.
There's a bunch of bad stuff out there.
There's a lot of bad stuff. Probably because it's fresh in my mind is that we treat everyone equal. That's probably the worst advice I've ever heard in my entire life. And in my world anyway, the most consistent form of consistency is to be inconsistent. And, my job is I work with a lot of different people, and I want to treat them fair, and I want to treat them according to what is important to them and not equal to someone else. We're not equal. We have 61 people in our home office. None of us are equal. We're all different. And I believe we deserve to be treated that way. So, yeah, probably treating people equal would be one. And right there with it is that, we need to make sure we write enough policies and procedures so we keep people in line. And that just drives me out of my ever-loving mind. So
how have you changed as a leader over the last 10 or 20 years?
I've changed a lot. I came in, my first role that I would consider to be a significant leadership role, I was probably 26, 27 years old. I was so wet behind the ears, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Honestly, I didn't. And I had some bad leaders over the years who taught me everything I needed to know about what not to do in leadership. That forced me to think about, if that's not right, what is right? And became very convinced that a leader's job is to do what's right for people. And if we do what's right for people, basically good things are going to happen, both for the leader and for the people that the leader supervises and serves. So that, to me, that's been incredibly important to mature in. I mean, good grief, I'm an old guy and I'm still not there. There's a lot I learn every day as I watch our team and think about what are some other ways that I can inspire their lives to a higher level of greatness.
Thank you for, putting up with my questions around your leadership. And we'll definitely get to Vetter. But I guess I want to ask, what did you learn about yourself during the pandemic as a leader? Sometimes leaders realized, hey, I did too much. Hey, I didn't realize I needed this. Or, hey, I can handle that. I don't want to do it again, but I'm okay.
Yeah, I learned a lot of things. First thing I learned is that you don't have to be an expert in everything. I'm not an expert in COVID. I'm not an expert in infection prevention. And I learned to let that be and let those who know what they're doing be our advisor. That's not easy for me to do. I like to be in control and I like to be in charge, at least knowing where are we headed, what direction, et cetera. So I really had to let that go. I think the second thing I learned is that I need to be a purveyor of hope. Through the times that we went through, everybody was looking for the bright side, and there weren't many. And the journey still isn't over. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a hopeful attitude about what the future could be. And so as a leader, I think it's our responsibility to be that purveyor of hope, and also just an example of the positivity that we're resilient and we're going to get through this thing.
That is perfect segue into the mission and vision of Vetter, because a lot of times, I'll pick up on the energy of someone and be like, they really don't care about mission and vision. I think it matters to you.
Yeah.
Tell me about Vetter, how it came to be, and speak to its mission and vision as you do.
Absolutely. Well, we're just so blessed. Jack and Eldora Vetter started the company back in 1975 by purchasing one facility. And as Jack would tell you today, he never dreamed that we would be where we are now, serving over 2,000 people. I mean, that's incredible, and what a blessing that is for us. And so today we're, over 30 communities and 3,500 team members. And everything that we do is still driven by a very simple mission. And the mission is dignity in life, which we interpret as we will treat every person we come in contact with as the most important person in our life. If we do that, we're going to be just fine. Now, that all sounds really fun when you're with people you like, but life isn't always filled with people we like, and bad things happen. So I think when we're tested at times when things aren't going so well. And during COVID was a great example of that. Just because we're going through this time doesn't mean our mission doesn't still stand firm. So we stood firm with that. I think the second thing is the vision that we have. And Jack and Eldora created several vision statements over the years. We call them the quality of life and quality of care and outstanding facilities, excellent teams, et cetera. They set the standard. And I always talk about our vision is who we want to be someday. Who do we want to be when we grow up? Well, if we can achieve the vision statements that we've established, then we're going to do okay, and residents are going to be blessed by the services that we provide. And then thirdly, our behaviors and our attitudes every day are driven by 4 very simple values: serving, integrity, teamwork, and excellence. And they're not like we talk about. We need to make these suckers jump off the poster, okay? Not just line the hallway, but we need them to walk the halls. And so bringing that to life every day sets a standard in terms of quality for our organization.
I'm going to ask you some questions about quality, but as we move into it, interested in, do you, as a expert in leadership, or definitely a connoisseur in leadership, do you like personality tests about work, people getting along, Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or anything?
Okay, wow, that's a great question. Yes, we are a very strengths-focused company, and so we have certainly done the Strengths Finder, and in fact use it as a primary way of identifying what are the things that we can do to create an environment that match the kind of strengths that our team members have. So we've probably been in that, I don't know how many years. I wish I knew. A lot of years. And everything that we do is driven by the identification and building on those strengths. It's a ton of fun. So I do like them.
Perfect. So I want to ask you, because one of the topics that I know that you're passionate about is ensuring quality.
Yeah.
Can you give me some examples of how your strengths help you get to where you are and grow?
Well, I don't know if I'm a good evaluator of myself, but my strengths are communication, adaptability. It's one of my strengths. Maximizer. Maximizer is being the perfectionist, and futuristic. So what my team would tell you is, here's Glenn, futuristic and maximizer. He's already got the perfect future figured out. And then with his woo and communication, he's trying to sell us on it, right? And get us there. And we're telling him, why don't you come and live back down here with us where we are? But I have talked to my team several times about, do I need to back off? I'm a strong believer that our elderly deserve the absolute best care and services that we can provide. And it is our commitment to make sure that that happens. So I have some pretty high standards and pretty high expectations, but my team has said to me over and over, don't lower them. All right. It's who we want to be. Just keep challenging us, but encourage us as well, and let us know that we're doing a good job. And that's the piece I need to do more of, is the encouragement side. I'm fine with the challenge side. I can challenge people to new levels, but to really encourage people for what they're already doing.
I want to transition into culture and the importance of culture. And the way that I'm kind of want to introduce it, you're probably picking up on this, Glenn, already, that usually the questions I'm asking is because I'm trying to learn something from you. Okay. So all of these things are in self-interest, going to help me in some way or another. I think that the best way that I keep my finger on the pulse with culture is one-on-ones with my direct reports, and then they do one-on-ones. How do you all keep your culture as you grow from the top?
Yeah, we're just very relational. That would be the best way to describe this company. I have an executive leadership team. The standard for that is, and we all get it, is that we must be unified. If we do not have a unified leadership team, then we can't expect our teams to be unified. At the facility level, I expect their leadership teams to be unified, and tell them, if you've got one person who is not on board, one person who's not on the train, you're going to spend all of your time trying to convince them that they ought to get on board. And that's not where our energy should be invested. And so, first of all, establishing the unified leadership team, after that, everything comes a lot easier. Because when we all know we're headed in the same direction, we don't have to agree on everything. In fact, we love to have some good arguments at times. But what's most important is when we come out from behind closed doors, that we're unified, everyone knows we're unified and headed in the same direction. And then building the relationships are critical to us. We went back into the office on May 6th, 2021. And I just said, guys, we're going back to the office. I can't do this virtually the rest of my life. So if you want to come back, you got to be vaccinated. I mean, we just took a stand, and the entire leadership team was unified on that. And one person decided not to come back. And otherwise, we're all there, and we enjoy who we are. We've gotten involved in the best place to work in Omaha and the great place to work in America surveys. And when they come back and we get the highlights, like what's a highlight of working in your company? It's always relation based. It's relation, we're family, we love each other, etc. It's just critical to who we are.
I like when you said, you need to be unified. It reminds me of the book from Gino Wickman, Traction, right seat, right person, or get it, got it, want it type of mentality. In terms of disruption, in terms of innovation, how do you approach that? Usually, I would say 99 out of 100 long-term care leaders don't use that language. It sounds like a tech, it sounds like a Silicon Valley type thing.
You're right.
But I know it's important to you.
It's extremely important. You make a really, really good point. We don't hear enough of it in our profession. I think that's one of the things that makes this conference so cool, the whole Innovation Summit idea, because that's not the way we normally talk in long-term care. So for us to disrupt, it begins with a commitment. And we are really committed to this, to transforming the view of senior living by doing what we do like no one else does it. And I know that might sound like pretty philosophical, and I guess it is, but we exist in a world today where our profession is not viewed with the highest level of respect. And I believe it should be. And I think about the heroes who are working in our facilities every day. They deserve to be called heroes, and they deserve the highest level of respect. We're asking this question. If we're not getting it, we can't blame someone else. So what are we going to do to transform it? How will we make a change? And when you talk about culture, Peter, I think the way we do that with culture is to make where we work a place where people love to be. And I don't mean that to be simplistic. That's hard work every day. But I want, when people grab that door handle in the morning, to go, God, I'm glad it's another day. I'm glad I have the opportunity to be here. And so on the culture side, that would be how we want to disrupt. But from an entire operation, we just want to do what we do like no one else does it. It's little things. Just what are the little things we can do every day that are going to make a difference?
Glenn, I want to take a pause and thank our sponsor, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the future. Where's Future of Vetters going? And then some rapid fire questions. Is that okay with you?
You bet.
All right, confession time. Yes, I host the LTC Heroes podcast, and hopefully you know that by now, but I can't take all the credit. Jason Long, the CEO of Experience Care, told me 2 years ago when we started this show that this new audio platform had to create value for everyone, whether you're a client of Experience Care's electronic healthcare records or not. He then encouraged me to become a CNA to really help LTC Heroes resonate with caregivers and leaders. And between me and you, he really knew what he was talking about. LTC Heroes has been invited to almost 10 conventions this year alone to finally shine a light on what leaders like you have been doing for decades. It's that sort of knowledge in the industry that really makes me appreciate Experience Care, which has developed customizable and intuitive EHR that makes clinical, financial, and billing processes more efficient and accurate. It transforms workflows into something that makes sense so you can focus on what really matters, caring about your residents. The software is used by assisted living, SNFs, and CCRCs, big and small facilities alike. Countless users have reached out and shared with me that it's really effective in helping them improve their outcomes. I can honestly say that I know my parents would be proud to learn that I work at a place like Experience Care. All right, we're back. Tell me about the growth of Vetters, and it doesn't have to be beds, employees, buildings. How do you think about the future and growth?
Well, I think there's some probably some fundamental things that we have to face. The first thing is we need to eradicate sacred cows. There's a lot of sacred cows in the long-term care profession. What I mean by that are beliefs and ideas and processes and procedures and systems. And my gosh, they've been in place forever and nobody ever questions them. But because of what we've experienced the past couple of years, we now realize we cannot just let those sacred cows hang in there, right? And we love what we love. We love our sacred cows. Don't touch them because we love them. And so we're really challenged. And we look at each other in about every meeting and say, so is that a sacred cow we're just hanging on to? And what are we going to do with it? Until you get rid of sacred cows, change, improvement, growth, quality is going to be very incremental. Once you eradicate, what I've watched happen, when you eradicate those sacred cows, you can knock the lid off of things because it's pretty much unlimited what you can achieve. Those sacred cows aren't holding you down. So that would be my first thing. And then secondly, I would say we want to be radically different. And by radically different is there are 14,000, 15,000 nursing homes in the United States. We're all doing the same thing. So if you're going to set yourself apart, you got to ask yourself, how are you going to be radically different than the norm? And at least begin thinking that way and become the most at something. I don't care what it is. If it's giving baths, if it's serving meals, if it's preparing meals, if it's doing, personal care, but be the most at it. And I believe that's the way that we become radically different.
I definitely haven't heard that answer on LTC Heroes yet. That's a first, Glenn.
Good.
You ready for some rapid fire questions?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. I think this one's going to be really easy for you as an author.
Here we go.
What's the book you've most given as a gift and why?
What is the book I've most given? This goes a bit with my leadership philosophy. And that is, I don't want anybody to be treated equal. And so a lot of the gifts I give are very varied based on the person. So I wouldn't have one. That I've given the most of.
You don't have one book that you've at least given twice?
Well, I give my own away, hoping that somebody will read it, but other than that.
That's okay. You can pass.
There's a lot of, there are a lot of books, but the one that it started it all for me was, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read that thing on a trip one time. I sat at a McDonald's having a cup of coffee before an appointment, and I was totally enthralled. But over the years, there have been a number of different books that have caught my attention.
All right. Next one is, what's something that you've done in the last year that you're extremely proud of?
That I have set aside, I've been intentional about time I spend with my 4 granddaughters. And the older I get, the more precious they become. And so for me, I'm probably one of the few granddads in the Midwest who loves to shop for dresses. I just love it. I love when I can bring a smile to their face and they go, Papa, I love this dress better than the last one you bought me. So that is not what you were looking for, Peter, but that's where I went with it.
I can relate. I have a 6-year-old and just consumes every moment that I can think of outside of work.
You got it.
Plus, he's the only grandson, so you can imagine how.
Gosh.
Yeah.
He's not spoiled though.
Oh, goodness.
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah.
Next one is, do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Yeah, I do. My favorite failure, because I've been able to use it to teach other people, was changing things too fast. I've been, especially in a situation where I was asked to create change, and I wish I had taken more time to get everybody on board before I pushed the change through. Yeah, it's just, you got to make sure there's such a fine line between how hard do I push and how little complacency do I allow. And so my favorite one, it just ran through my head right away, was I should have allowed more time for the change to take place.
I appreciate the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Honest. Last question.
That's what happens when you get old. You don't.
Last question, Glenn. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it that hundreds of thousands of people or maybe millions of people would see on the highway, what does that billboard say and why?
I'm going to go back to mission. I would put on the billboard, treat everyone as the most important person in your life. I just don't think, we go through life and really the impact that we have on other people is what's going to be remembered. And even my granddaughters, they're not going to remember the little dresses I bought, but they will remember how I treat them. And whether it's my granddaughter or my spouse or the people at work, or I don't care, it's the people at the grocery store and when I stop to get gas, the question becomes, how can I treat them like the most important person in my life? How do I make their day a little better than what it was before I came? And yeah, that'd be my billboard. Treat everyone as the most important person in your life.
Great answers. Great interview, Glenn. Thank you for joining me on LTC Heroes. It was a pleasure. Hopefully meet you back here at the Nebraska conference next year.
It'd be fun, Peter.
Thank
you.
Want to connect with leaders in long-term care? Go to www.ltcheroes.com to join our community on Facebook and LinkedIn. Get exclusive access to marketing tips, SOPs, and insights from prominent voices in the industry.